Hi, Miranda. Hi, Jennifer. I wasn't expecting to see you here, but I'm glad to have you in play.
Julie, this is Karen. It's the first meeting I've actually been able to make. So I'm pretty much just gonna listen.
I can't hear anybody.
You can't hear me, Jennifer? I wonder if she needs to log in through her computer, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I wasn't
I
hearing
might-
anyone.
I
for a
might
while
text
there.
her.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I think I can hear. Somebody say something.
Hello.
Jennifer, can you hear me?
Here. Yay.
I can, yes,
Good,
yes.
good.
So Julian, I sent to Miranda and Karen the YouTube video that's been going around. Have you seen it about lawyer in the Zoom court session?
Oh, with the cat face.
Yes.
That is hilarious and darling.
Yeah. Yes. I really enjoyed it. It gave me a good chuckle.
All right, we have one person on the phone. I'm wondering if you could identify yourself, please.
Hey, it's Larry Ned Beatty.
Ah, hello.
How are you, sir?
Fine.
Good, good.
I'm glad you could make it.
You just never know, but today we're good.
All right. I'm not sure. I think we have a quorum. So uh, I'll call the meeting to order then, and we'll pick up other people as they arrive. Um, we set out the agenda a while ago, and so as you probably all know, the first thing I want to discuss is if we can classify the various the various marijuana lounges, right? This started out as marijuana lounges, and then we saw a couple of presentations that made it clear to me, at least, that that meant a whole bunch of different things. Marijuana lounges where you bring your own marijuana, lounges where they'll sell you the marijuana and you have to consume it on premises, marijuana products, and you have to consume it on premises. And then a shock to me, mobile marijuana lounges, which is a brand new concept for me. I proposed in the agenda that we at least start out referring to all of these as consume on premises facilities and see if we can work from there. Ben sent a very good email explaining why mobile was probably a very different animal. And so I'm ready to propose that for agenda item number 1, for the remainder of the discussion, we view consume on premises fixed and consume on premises mobile as the two things we're going to be talking about. I want to also reiterate that there's nothing in this that assumes that we ever intend, there's nothing in here that presumes we're going to opt in. A perfectly reasonable option is for this group to say, we're selling marijuana in Netherlands, we're not letting people consume on premises. Perfectly fine if that is our conclusion. But what I want to do today, especially the most important thing in my mind, is for us to think through pros and cons. Our goal is to do something that is good for Netherlands. And so the question is, can we list pros and cons for consume on premises facilities within the town of Netherlands? And if we have a whole lot of pros, then that helps us in the direction of opting in. If we have a whole lot of cons, that helps us to think through if we should not opt in. Because bear in mind, what we've learned is that we opt in. If we don't say anything, we're officially opted out. So before we begin, then, I'd like to kind of go through and ask for comments on agenda item number 1. Consume on premises, are there a whole bunch of variations that we have to consider? Or could we break this down as fixed and mobile, consume on premises for the purposes of our discussion? So I think I'm going to start by asking Angelica, do you have any comments regarding that proposal?
Julian, thank you so much for including me in the conversation. I really appreciate it. Funny enough that you should ask me first, as I was just reading over the questions, and I do not necessarily have a pro and a cons as far as the separating the two. However, I will say that IGADI as an organization does support legal on-premise consumption in general. Whether it is the proper timing to be approving it with a national pandemic or not, it is of question to us. However, as far as the general consumption on premises, we are open to the hospitality licensing.
Very fine. Lindsay, any thoughts?
My first thought was just that when it comes to the on-premises consumption, there are 2 different types. There's the bring your own cannabis, and then there's the type where a business would also be allowed to sell it. So as far as Silverstone is concerned, we would not support allowing any hospitality businesses that would also be allowed to sell, because we put the cap on dispensaries in Netherlands. So we wouldn't be open to any other sales licenses. And then as far as pros and cons go, pro would be I know there's a lot of national forests nearby where possession and consumption is obviously not allowed. So if there are people consuming outdoors or places where they shouldn't be in Nederland or surrounding areas around Nederland, it might cut back on that a bit. Cons, definitely all the public health issues that have been brought up, and especially during a pandemic, I don't know that now is the best time. My thought would be kind of just leave it up to city council, and if there was someone that wanted to open one of these types of businesses in Nederland, they could maybe just bring their proposal to city council at that time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison, any thoughts?
Thanks. So I think to the question of are they distinct, thinking about the on-site consumption, purchase there, bring your own, or mobile, I think they are really different. I think there's some real challenges to the mobile piece that hadn't, to your point, Trustee Taylor, that it wasn't something that we had really been considering as part of the discussion. So I think if those should be separate. In general, in terms of pros and cons, I think it's, as the folks shared last time, it's public health best practice to opt out, to not have opportunities for employees to be exposed to secondhand smoke, to not further normalize use of marijuana for young people with increased visibility, concerns around public safety of DUIs. What would folks be doing after they leave the establishments? I think especially for a community like Nederland, with a lot of tourists and people, driving up and down the canyon, I think that's an additional consideration. And while it is, yes, technically, if Nederland takes no action, that is opting out because you need to affirmatively opt in. Having an opt-in process be a process that has thorough public engagement, where the public knows what's happening and is able to provide input and comment, is really important. And I think waiting until the business is interested is a dangerous thing to do, because that could happen really quickly and could happen without public notice. And I think making a big change like this, being one of the, if it's something that Nederland chooses to do, would be one of the first communities in Colorado to do it, with something that should be done with a thorough community engagement process.
Very fine. Thank you, Allison. Max, any thoughts on whether whether we need to consider those three different types of consume on premises as three separate things, or if we can narrow it down to mobile versus fixed? Max, are you still on? Maybe you're not. Oh, now that I'm looking. Not seeing Max. So Marshall Johns, any thoughts on that classification?
Yeah, so on the on-site, I'll just hit the pros and cons real quick. In my opinion, one is obviously it's not being done in the public, so you don't have the youth observing that stuff. But you still have a location and they know what's going on. So I don't know that really makes a huge difference. I don't know how would the town benefit in a revenue wise for on-site consumption, possibly because it's bought from next door, around the corner, from a dispensary. I'm not sure. Another pro would probably be measured use and monitored use.
So, Marshall, one moment, please. I'm wanting to get through the question of whether we're going to be discussing fixed versus mobile first.
Okay. All right, let me back up. Sorry about that.
Perfectly fine.
The question for me, at least on mobile, would be, if it's mobile, Nederland's kind of tiny, so are they just going to do laps around town? Is it illegal if they leave town into Boulder County? Yeah. I don't know that answer.
And I'm kind of wondering, and this is going to be a question I'm going to ask Attorney Madsen. I'm curious about if some other town has licensed a mobile van and the mobile van just drives through Nederland. What's that going to be like? So it's interesting. So, but before I get into that, I'd like to turn to Ben. Ben, your thoughts on mobile versus fixed, and bring your own versus buy on site.
Right. You'll come back to me for the pros and cons then. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, and by the way,
We're doing
I have,
agenda item number 1. I'm being
right.
very
We're being
very
structured.
strict.
Right. And I also have the answers for the questions that were just posed and the specific
Oh,
parts
good.
of state
Excellent.
regulations when you're interested in hearing the exact language.
Perfect.
So, but I won't get there now. Ask me when you want it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to separate mobile from the on-premises. I hear who was saying the be bring your own versus retail. I don't know that that's necessarily, if you were to keep the location cap, in place, I don't know why there would be a distinction between the two. So yeah, so on that issue, whether it's bring your own or not, right, or on site, whether you separate it kind of depends on how you do it. Is it going to be,
Yeah.
Is it going to be within the cap, or is it going to be in addition to the cap?
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, and I don't think any of it should be happening, to be clear. But certainly mobile, at least not in Netherlands. But mobile is, yeah, certainly something else, because it can drive up and down First Street. I mean, they can't. Well, I told you I'll get into the regulations if you ask, but yeah,
Okay.
that's what would end up happening. It's very different. You can't control for nuisance and odor and location. Right.
Okay. So I'm going to end then with Attorney Madsen. Any thoughts on if there are key differences that we should be taking into account regarding the 3 different kinds of marijuana lounge we've discussed?
I think that everybody really covered it. I mean, there's definitely different regulations that apply and rules to each of the different establishments, but nothing aside from that. There isn't really anything else that I can think of.
So I do know, and I understand, Jennifer, that you are helping us to put together the wording for the marijuana limitations. And I know that I was considering retail and the cap on retail as something that would probably be viewed as different from a marijuana lounge where they sell locally, sell and then allow you to consume on premises. So that may just be an error in the way I was thinking it through. But certainly I understand Lindsay's concern about if it's a marijuana lounge and it's considered a retail establishment, even though they're consuming on premises, that might be affected by our cap. But I think my thoughts were that it wouldn't be affected by the cap, but I may be misreading and misthinking that.
I think it actually would be affected by the cap.
Okay, so you're thinking that's in our terms, that is just another retail facility, plus you get to consume on premises.
Well, right.
So good
If the Board
comment.
of Trustees decided to opt in for the retail marijuana hospitality establishments, then yes, that cap would still apply because you have to have a retail establishment that's connected.
Okay, so that may be a case where if we were to opt in, one of our retail establishments could include a lounge, and then the cap would still be in place, but it would be associated with that location and that particular marijuana lounge.
Right, and also know that always that cap can be changed.
Right, absolutely. So before we go any further, because I'm suddenly realizing that I'm confused on this. I think Ben knows the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway, Jennifer, because you're the attorney. Does Netherlands have any control over mobile lounges that drive through it? What is our ability to say no, you can't bring that in here, or park it at least?
I'm sure that if Netherlands did not opt in, that there are traffic laws that would prohibit it, and the marijuana license rules that would prohibit it
Okay.
for, and sounds like Ben is more up to speed on this than I am.
I was going to turn back to Ben when you were done.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like I think the issue is it's a little vague. It's frustratingly like the regulations are very sparse and open to interpretation.
Yeah.
The local approval required, I quote, a marijuana hospitality business with a mobile premises may only operate in local jurisdictions that have an ordinance or resolution authorizing the operation of mobile premises and for which it holds any required local licenses.
Okay, good.
Mobile premises operation includes, but is not limited to, allowing passengers to consume marijuana, boarding, disembarking, etc. So you can only operate where you're licensed, and someone else couldn't come in here if we opted out. They'd have to have approval, and the same goes for anyone who opened up here. Like they couldn't leave town, which would be kind of just
Right.
a situation. I don't know why anyone want to open that premises. But yeah, that's it. Let me find.
Okay.
I'm going to put the section in the notes in case anyone wants to read it.
All right. Thank you very much.
And
Miranda, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to update that there is a provision in the model traffic code, which speaks to motor vehicles and marijuana use, and says, let's see, a person while in the passenger area of motor vehicle that's on a public highway of the state or right of way of the state may not use or consume marijuana. I mean, I would have to just look at this a little bit more closely to make sure this applies to Netherland.
Sure.
But I think this is what we would be looking at.
Okay. So you're suspecting we would be able to simply prohibit. I guess it would be hard to stop such a facility if it were not well marked, just driving through the town, but certainly stopping, opening the doors, and letting people wander about. That's something where we would have clear jurisdiction.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. So thank you. I am now feeling much more comfortable that I understand that. So I'm wondering, Miranda, are you with us yet? Oh my, I was hoping Miranda would be back because I'm not sure that I have the facilities to do what Miranda was going to do. Perhaps what we
What
can
was she going to do for you, Julian?
Miranda was going to, well, I suggested this in the agenda, but I didn't actually ask Miranda directly. What we're going to do is pros versus cons regarding how a facility such as we are discussing would benefit Netherlands. And so our decision has to be based upon whether this is good for Netherlands or not. And good for Netherlands could mean we're bringing revenue into the town, or in any number of possibilities. But I wanted to throw it out to this group. And I was hoping that Miranda would be able to share a document of some sort, perhaps a Word document or a spreadsheet with columns for, it sounds to me like there's valid reason for 3 columns for consume on premises where where they're allowed sales, consume on premises where you bring your own, and mobile. And my thought was we would simply do pros and cons for each of those as regards their effect on the town. So Karen, that was what I was kind of hoping, was that someone would be able to share. I could do it too, but I'd be doing it on this piece of paper and no one would be able to see it. And I don't think I've got the facilities to share a document that's being edited. Would this
Okay, well, let me see if that's something I can do.
Oh, okay, that would be wonderful. So I'd like everyone to be thinking about pros and cons. And I was kind of thinking we could cut it down to just one classification, but hearing the discussion, I think we're talking 3 classifications: sell on premises and consume, bring your own and consume, or traveling. So, and for each of those, I was hoping we could say, for this particular type of thing, how does this help the town? How does this hurt the town? And come up with some lists of pros and cons, and then we're able to put into context what we propose to the Board of Trustees. Does that sound like a reasonable way to go here? Hearing no objections, I suspect we will try this. Well, I terribly sorry, Karen, that I did not plan this through with you earlier.
No worries. Let me see. I might be getting close.
Oh, okay. I think a spreadsheet would be the best way to go for this.
I could help too. I could share my screen, my Word. I've got a separate. Oh, that's perfect.
Excellent. So this is wonderful. So we got pros and cons on premises. So Karen, thank you so much. That is going to help us a lot, I think. And what would be the, you know what, Karen, I wonder if we want pros and cons as columns underneath that, underneath those. So we would have pro on the, maybe pro on the right, con on the left, and then we make our lists going down. That would be my thought on that, because I think we're going to be making lists, maybe long lists, maybe short lists, not sure which. I see you're using Excel.
Yeah, and I'm having a hard, I don't normally do this. So why don't you just let me do it this way?
Oh,
and
right
then
ahead.
I can adjust it or
You
send
go
it to
right
you.
ahead.
Okay.
No, absolutely. So yeah, so let's begin then, because I know the agenda has been out there for quite some while, and I have no doubt that certain members of the committee already have their lists thought through, and I think that's wonderful. So Karen, thank you so much for filling in on this. So I'm going to suggest that we begin. Perhaps, Karen, is there a way to make that bigger for everyone to see? I guess I'm kind of, if I double click, I can zoom in. I'm seeing it pretty well right now. Is everyone else seeing this fairly well, or do we need to maybe bring the font size up a little? I'm sounding like the mayor now when I say hearing no objections.
No.
So I'm going to go through to each of you and ask you to help us fill in pros and cons. And if you're going to be, if you're saying these pros and cons apply to everything, that should be just fine. But if you have a particular pro or a particular con for a particular type here, please feel free to state that. And I'm going to begin with Angelica. Angelica, we have the 3 types of lounge that we've discussed listed. I guess the first question is, are we missing a type?
I do not think that we are missing a type, particularly in looking at the options available, trying to come up with the pros and cons. So it is a very useful exercise.
And perhaps I can further clarify, in case it's not clear, that these are pros and cons for the town of Nederland. So we're saying, how does this help the town of Nederland? How does this introduce concerns?
Correct. So from that perspective, so the pros could obviously be the additional income revenue source for the town of Nederland on all 3 discussed options.
Mm-hmm.
The cons to that would be the cost of regulation and the cost of, I don't want to say initial policing, but oversight. The more number of different type of licenses are allowed, the more oversight is required. And to what degree do we want to tax the marijuana community to sustain that? So I think perhaps reducing the number that we're looking at, the number of licenses that we're looking at, to help save on the cost of regulation. And I think that it will apply to each individual one from my perspective. I don't particularly have a specific input on any one of these. I think the mobile units will present probably the most hurdle to, from the pros or the cons, just thinking of the Department of Transportation, the regulations, will it fall within the federal umbrella or not? So I do not have answers to that, and it would be something interesting to look up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. Lindsay, any additional issues to add to this?
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
When you were talking about cost of regulation and oversight, is that the cost of regulation to the town with enforcement and so forth, you know, processing paperwork and all that, or were you talking more to the cost of the businesses?
I'm talking to the city of, to the town of Nederland.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's
Yes.
what I assumed. I just wanted to be sure I was right. Thanks.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, focusing on issues, focusing on Nederland. Lindsay,
Thank you. I'll just reiterate real quick that one of the pros to all types would be if there is an issue right now in Nederland of public consumption, moving that consumption from out of view of the public. And then as far as a con, I would reiterate again all the public health concerns we talked about, such as secondhand smoke and the ventilation requirements, etc. Thank you.
hey Karen, I'm perfectly happy with you just putting quotation marks where they're carried all the way across. So, and we can make it pretty later. So I appreciate your typing it in at each point, but I was just thinking, oh, we could just do a quotation mark and say, this is true all the way across. So.
Sorry, Julian, I did just think of one more con, if you don't mind.
No, absolutely.
Especially with edibles, my concern would be drugged driving afterwards, and especially, as Angelica said, the cost to the town of enforcing that.
Right.
Thank you.
And I think we're bringing up drugged driving here because we're all really, really familiar from the standpoint of regulation and seeing people on the road with kind of how alcohol affects people. And we are aware that marijuana affects people in a different way. Sometimes it's the effect is more delayed and issues like that. So yes, of course, that is an important con. Thank you very much for your input, Lindsay. Allison, anything to add? Anything to modify?
So with a con with the secondhand smoke protection, that there isn't a way with ventilation to mitigate those risks. And for the secondhand smoke protection, we'd be concerned about employees for sure being in all the establishments, unless yeah, I think in all the establishments worried about employees, especially being there for a long shift, which is longer than a consumer would be there. Right. I think a con would be not further normalizing youth marijuana use to the point that was made before about that even if you couldn't see from the street or you couldn't see what was happening, that smoking was occurring, people would know what was young people would know what was happening and could further create the assumption that marijuana is normal and safe. Obviously, we know that businesses in Nederland would not serve to minors, but there are maybe unintended impacts to young people in terms of creating a culture. And
Allison, would you hold on just one moment
sure,
while I offer Karen a few more moments to add
yes, for sure.
the normalization entry. So Karen, I don't know if Excel works like OpenOffice, but if you were to select the columns, select all the columns and then set them to the larger font size, I think that would simplify what you're, yeah, if you were just to go to the top, select all the columns and then set them all to 16 point, I think that would help.
Yeah, that will work. And I did it for the top and I need to do it for the bottom now. I'm working on a couple different things. I'm doing the best I can.
No, I am absolutely, I
I'm a
greatly
little
appreciate what you're
nervous
doing.
because I don't normally do this, but I'm doing it.
You are doing an excellent job, Karen. There's no problem here at all. I just wanted to give you a few moments to kind of to catch up. We're in no rush.
Some of us speak pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In fact, well, maybe you can't. Yeah, okay. Oh, see, that'll do it. That'll do it. Yeah, okay. Excellent. All right. Allison, please proceed.
Thanks. So it has been mentioned, but I think customers driving under the influence, especially with edibles, thinking about how that could be a danger to not only tourists, but Netherlands residents. And at the moment, the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment recommends waiting 6 hours after smoking marijuana and 8 hours after using an edible before driving. So to implement that to the letter is not viable for a business. Right. So thinking about what the impacts that may have. And then it has been mentioned before, the increased costs and burden on law enforcement. So not only around the driving, but also around compliance checks and their potential for increased interaction between law enforcement and community members. And if I'm remembering correctly, the marshal had said that implementing having on-site consumption may mean needing another officer. So thinking about what cost that would be to the town for the enforcement of new, a whole new license type and business type.
Right.
And then another piece would be potential for odor complaints as well, that if you're having folks consume on site, what that would mean for odor for other businesses and how the presence of on-site consumption may impact other businesses in Netherlands.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank Marshall you. Johns. And thanks, Karen.
Marshall Johns, your thoughts on this?
Thank you. So I would say on the pro side of things, I hope you'd have the ability for measured amount of use and at least monitored use. And a lot of other stuff's already been said, obviously. Under the con side of things, a lot of stuff has been said, but obviously there may be some sort of signage, and the message that's just going to send has already been discussed, but it's just something else to think about. What would that sign look like out front? And everything else has pretty much been hit on for sure. That's all I have.
Thank you, Marshall. And Karen, I think that is a really good, I'm sorry, I'm distracting you at this point. Go ahead and finish what you were doing.
No, it's all right. I mean, we're all friends here.
No, I absolutely. I was thinking Marshall John's comment about the fact that the usage is measured out carefully by the bud tender is probably a good pro for this. So we've got more pros there. It's the consumption is measured by the bud tender, and that's helpful. Am I using the right term, bud tender, folks?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Trustee Julian?
Yes.
I guess I'm thinking, I don't know what, I was thinking under measured use, at least, potentially somebody that's more experienced user, I guess I would say, and from the area, maybe the measured use would be like, kind of slowing these people down to tourist speed as opposed to Netherlands speed. And
yes,
I don't know that what we're talking about as far as dosage, if, we're going to say you can have a half a gram or 1 gram, or I have no idea.
I know that it's very specific, and I'm confident that Angelica or Lindsay would know the number. It's
I have
not-
the
it's
specific
not
numbers.
much. Yeah, it's
It is-
not much.
No, it is actually. I mean, no, it's
It
not a
is?
lot. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at 2 grams of flour, which is about
Mhm.
the size of a joint, that's well, that's not it's either 2 grams of flour, half a gram of concentrate, or a purchase containing 20 milligrams of active THC
Okay.
or more. But 20 milligrams of active THC, it's not a massive amount, but in today's potency, if one single person in one sitting
Yeah.
smoke that much, it's about a joint for one person. That's an amount you usually share between 2 or 3 people. So if you're talking about tourists, so no, it's not a lot. Like if someone were to smoke 20 milligrams in their basement, they'd be blasted, but I wouldn't worry about them. I'd be really concerned about someone consuming that amount at a business establishment where they're supposed to get somewhere afterwards.
Ah,
And
okay.
so
So it's 20 milligrams.
20 milligrams of THC
Okay.
or those other numbers, I can
Yeah,
provide
okay.
that as well if helpful in chat. But
I'm positive I've seen that before, and for some reason, I was thinking 20 milligrams of THC didn't add up to that much, but it could be that is more potent than I am understanding.
Industry could correct me, but it's about the size of a joint in the typical potency today. So
Okay.
like, yeah, 20 milligrams back in the day, wasn't much. I mean, no, not 20 milligrams, but a joint, right, wouldn't have had 20 milligrams.
Mhm.
Things
Yeah.
are different now. And so it doesn't really give you that measured amount to where you need it for public safety in
Right.
our specific context. That might work in some city somewhere, but not in our context.
Okay.
So
All right.
Can I ask a question of Jennifer real quick? This is Karen. Jennifer, when we talk about the mobile units, are we also talking about mobile units that might come up specific to a festival, for instance? Or is that a whole different sort of licensure and permit and that kind of thing?
I think you would have to, I'm not aware of a mobile unit license that would be permitted for a festival.
And I know they were talking about it last year. I don't know if anything ever passed. So I'm kind of assuming this does not include that, but I was just wondering if something happened that I didn't know about related to festivals.
No, I'm not aware of any legislation on that. I mean, maybe that was part of the abbreviated session for the General Assembly, that was something that was put aside. So I'm not aware of that. And that brings up something that I was thinking about, or an issue. I know we've separated these out into 3 separate categories. However, I don't know that we can separate out mobile units from a hospitality establishment license. So in other words, that would be something I would want to look at. If the Board of Trustees agreed to opt in for marijuana hospitality establishment licenses, could you carve out mobile units and say, no, we don't want to allow mobile units?
Jennifer, from some of the other cities and looking at the state, is that with the local license, you do have a lot of that flexibility where you can really carve out even more specific than that. You can define like the kind of mobile things or other things about the establishment itself.
Okay.
So my understanding is you can't do that. And I know Ben's been looking into that too. Around local licensing and things.
I thought one year they actually had a mobile bus up here for Frozen Dead Guy Days. I could be wrong, but that's what I thought.
They actually did, Larry, and I remember this was kind of an issue for us to try to understand if they even legally could, because I think that they actually had gotten their permission through Frozen Dead Guy Days, but I remember, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, we put a kibosh on that and told her she couldn't do it anymore because she had actually advertised it in her program. You remember this? And I caught it and I went, I don't even think this is legal. And I can't even remember if it was Miranda, when Miranda was the town clerk, or when it was Nicole, but we put the kibosh on it because I couldn't find any legal, parameter for them to be able to do that. But I do think they did it prior to us putting the kibosh on it.
I think they did too.
And I think it was a vendor, like you could take a bus ride and, enjoy, whatever, sort of like a beer bus would be. And I think the marijuana was more of a sort of add-on that wink, wink, certain people knew about. But then when they put an ad in their program about it, it became very obvious.
All right. I believe we were with Marshall Johns. Marshall Johns, before we move on, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think pretty much everything else was covered.
Right.
So I think we're good on that.
All right. Then Ben, your thoughts, anything to add?
Sure. I mean, on the I think the pro side is a short list here. I think if there are any jobs, like if there would be any additional job in addition to whoever's minding like the retail aspect, you're talking a $13, $14 an hour job at most. Maybe there'd be one or two at most created by this. I mean, maybe I'm going to try to find a pro here. I mean, and I just want to say, like, to Allison's point, I mean, a lot of the pros and cons, right, are not necessarily don't have to be dictated by the state regulation, because through local licensing, you can collect additional revenue, you can add additional regulations, right? So it's hard for me to, like, I don't know which possibility I'm responding to, but okay. So, I mean, I guess theoretically there could be like a local tax. Would it be enough to outweigh all the expenses? I don't know. Here's the pro I give you. Like, there's someone I was talking to who doesn't drink. He would love to be able to go be social somewhere and do that instead. My suspicion is when he found it full of tourists, he wouldn't go there anyway, but that's just, okay, there's my pro. So the cons, I guess neighboring businesses and odor complaints was brought up. I think, again, the cost to Netherland in enforcement, dealing with odor complaints, and public safety will probably outweigh any revenue that you can generate through this reasonably. A big con for me, and I think this was mentioned, yeah, is the under the influence, especially combination. Like, there's not, I'll add to that conversation, yeah, the combination part. Like, there's not, you have measured, kind of measured amounts, and maybe you can even measure it more through local licensing, right? 10 milligrams. But there's not really a good way to make sure someone doesn't bounce from one place to another or go to one of the bars and then get in a car. And I'll tell you, just to make it like on a personal level, what frightens me the most is my partner coming up Coal Creek or Boulder Canyon with one of these tourists going down the other direction, coming around a turn after having consumed, right? That's what scares me. Like this, and that's why I think Netherland is a very different, right? This isn't Toronto or something, or Amsterdam, where you can just go to a cafe and like stumble back to your hotel. Like, that's just not where we're at. So yeah, so risk to tourists, risk to residents. I think everything else was kind of covered. I mean, there's the density and prominence of things. And I think that's especially an issue with mobile. So if you want to, like, I think that's an issue with everything. I know there's like a business on this call who has like a really tasteful sign and it doesn't really, create that that kind of environment for our town. However, a mobile bus, you can't control where it is. It's going to be flashy. It's going to be loud. And there's going to be smoke pouring out of it. Another con related to that on mobile is that regulations for ventilation on these buses are almost non-existent. They just say they say proper ventilation, whatever that means, and keep the smoke away from the driver. Is not enough to go on. And if you are venting, you know where it's going to be. It's going to be on First Street. Yeah. Like wafting into like the Ned's, patio or something. So, I guess, yeah, I think that's it for me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So I'm going to throw something else in because I'm thinking about this in terms that throughout our marijuana discussions, I'm hoping I've made it clear that we don't have a particular problem with people smoking marijuana. The issue is how do we manage the businesses around that. And so I'm thinking in terms of if someone were to come to me and say, we want to open a new tap house, what are the pros and cons for Nederland? And I would certainly include a pro for a tap house, that it's a congenial place for people to meet. And so I think, to be fair, I think that is a pro for a marijuana lounge, a congenial place for people to meet. And I'm not saying that outweighs anything else, but I think we should mention that because that's how people typically treat a bar. We're all much more familiar with alcohol's effect on people, and we have much more experience dealing with people who drink in moderation and then drive than we have dealing with people who smoke marijuana and drive, especially if they're at a bar where they have to drive home.
Julian,
so anyway,
would you?
I'm just throwing that in.
Julian, would you like me to put that under the mobile too, or just the?
You know what? I think you're right. I think that probably does not apply in the same way to mobile. So
Okay.
yeah, I'd leave that out for mobile. So before we proceed to the next agenda item, I wonder if anyone has anything else they would like to bring up before we go further. Any comments or thoughts before we go further?
Can I just raise something, and I think it
Please.
could be included already as a pro.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not, I'm not stating a position either way, but I think it could be added as a pro, is that potential increased revenue for other businesses in the town. I mean,
right. Now, was that what was intended by additional revenue, or were we thinking in terms of taxation, revenue only for the town?
I thought of it as only taxation, but
then that's fine. Let's have an additional category. Let's have an additional entry then, because you're right. Those are distinct issues. And whenever we're talking about the mobile van, I think we're talking about a mobile van that we have licensed and is going to be operating within Nederland. And that may seem impractical to most of us, but anyway, if we were to license a mobile van, it too would be bringing in additional revenue for surrounding businesses. All right.
Just a quick, just a quick
Please.
thing on the congenial place for people to meet. I think one distinction to point out between an establishment that serves alcohol and an establishment where people would consume marijuana is, with an alcohol establishment, the fact that the patrons are consuming alcohol doesn't have an impact on the employees or on other patrons, where with marijuana it would.
Absolutely. And I believe we've included that as one of our cons.
Absolutely. I just wanted to mention it.
We have. Absolutely. Then agenda item number 3 was to split these out if we saw specific differences. And I think we've already done that. I think we've already satisfied agenda item number 3 because we've called them out as separate items and we've identified the pros and cons for those separate items. So I'd like to move on to agenda item number 4, which is what is our general disposition regarding allowing consume on-premises establishments in Nederland. We've done the pros and cons. I think we have done them fairly. We have not weighted the pros and cons, which is what we would have to do if we're going to be mathematical about this. So instead, I'm asking for a general feel from the group, and I'd like just anyone who wants to speak up to speak up. What is our general view? Does this identify a feature for Nederland that is good enough that we need to opt in, or does this look iffy, or does it look like we definitely need to opt out? I'd just like to hear I'd like to get a general consensus on that from the people in attendance. So if anyone would like to speak. And just go ahead.
All right. Yeah, before I say this, I want to echo what you said about this not being about making judgments about the use. Certainly, I've heard concerns referred to as stigma or sort of judgments. That's absolutely not where I'm coming from here. I have no desire to return to the bad old days at all. And I think the community appreciates the businesses that are here. However, my sense, it probably won't surprise anyone, is that it's not worth it here, and that Nederland is uniquely unsafe for this particular type of business. I mean, and I'll say too, like, I'd have some concerns, some of the same concerns about, additional alcohol establishments that were not like also restaurants that were just like aimed at heavy drinking, especially new ones where we didn't know the bartenders and trust them and have relationships with those businesses. So, yeah, my sense is that I would opt out, not out of making moral judgments, just because the costs and benefits don't suggest that it makes sense. That would cost us more than it's worth, and because of our location and our context and specific situation, it would be especially dangerous here in ways that might not be quite so somewhere else. But we're a unique place, with unique infrastructure and geography. So that's my two cents.
Thank you, Ben. Any other thoughts? So we have a strong vote for opt out. I'm looking for a vote for something else, opt in or passively don't opt in.
This is Angelica here with Igati. So one of the, I have more questions, I think, than answers. And some of the questions are, I think it is definitely worth a further conversation. And the question that I have, we are a proponent of allowing social use on regulated premises under hospitality licenses. And we do believe that regulating social use during a pandemic is perhaps not a best time. However, I think conversation should be had. The question is, are we ready to opt in? Because I think it's creating more questions than answers for us at the time. And particularly, there are limitations set by the state as far as how much you can sell on a daily basis for your medical versus your retail locations. And then the option of bringing your own product for consumption, how would that be regulated? So I'm not quite sure that I understand the benefit of that particular option. I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around that particular scenario. And then having a hospitality license that's connected to the retail location, is it in order to reduce the number of licenses? We know we've capped it at 4. And so just understanding how would that, if we were to create additional hospitality licenses, would it increase the cap as well?
And it does sound like, based upon Jennifer's interpretation, that it would, they would have to be covered by the cap if if they were selling on premises for consumption. So that is an important point to keep in mind.
Okay, so I think in our opinion, it is definitely worth having the conversation. I don't know if we are quite ready. If it is the right time to opt in, or if additional conversations should be had just to understand how would this actually work itself out operationally.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the only reason the bring your own doesn't seem as odd to me is because I grew up in Oklahoma, where you had to bring your own beer to a restaurant. So yeah, so I'm used to that. But
And there were pool shops
yeah.
in Texas where you did that.
Yes, yes. So but it does seem an odd business model, but sure. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Any other thoughts? Ben, you seem eager to speak. Please proceed.
Oh, that was just the bringing the beer to the restaurants in Oklahoma. No, you know what? It's not. I was just being a nerd about something. There's a part about about the cap, and it not just being the number of locations, but also required to be that, like, hospitality would be required to be held by retail. Like, you'd have to have both. We'll get into it if it comes to that, and I can show you some examples of such order, but I don't think it's relevant. I was just being a nerd.
Okay, all right. Are there any other thoughts? I mean, it sounds to me like we have a solid vote for opt-out, and we have a solid vote for passively opt-out, because we can change our minds more easily later. Do we have a vote for actively opt-in? So let me see if I can summarize based upon what I've seen and heard, and based upon some of my concerns regarding the town. For myself, if we were to just hold a vote right now for opt-in, passively opt-out, or actively opt-out, I believe I would be voting for opt-out. My feeling is that we have a healthy marijuana industry here. We have plenty of places where people can obtain marijuana. We aren't ashamed of it, and we don't disparage the industry. And yet, the idea of serving marijuana as if it were a bar within the town, my general feeling would be the recommendation, if it were just me making the decision, I'd be voting to opt out. And I'm about ready now to ask for a vote. It's sounding to me like the people on this committee could express themselves in a vote, and then I would make this recommendation with the help, of course, of staff and Attorney Madsen, make a recommendation to the BOT based upon that vote. Shall I call for a vote? And the vote would be opt out, passively opt out, or opt in. And I'm going to suggest we proceed. Does everyone feel confident that they know what they would vote if we were to take a vote on this issue? Hearing no objections, I'm going to ask for a vote. Angelica, how would you vote if it were opt out, passively opt out, or opt in?
I would probably vote to passively opt out with an option to reconsider this at a later time.
I think, in a sense, that is what that would mean.
Then we're voting for passively opting out.
Okay. So, Lindsay, if you were to vote, how would you vote? Never mind. I'm acting like we're virtually voting. We're actually really voting. Lindsay, how would you vote?
I think I would second what Angelica just said. So we would passively opt out,
Okay.
hoping to maybe consider it later.
All right, thank you. Allison, your vote.
Opt out and have concerns about passively opting out that I'd love to chat about.
Okay.
But my vote is opt out.
Ben, your vote.
As I said, opt out. I understand the input that there are some questions that are not answered regarding passively opting out, but there are some things about Netherland, like where we are in the mountains, that are just not changing. So that it's just not for us.
Okay. Officer Johns. Opt out, passively opt out, opt in.
I would opt out. I don't see that it has enough value long-term for the town.
I have a question for Karen or Miranda. Miranda, are you back?
I am back. Hi.
Hi, Miranda.
Hello
So,
there.
We're taking a vote, as you can see, and I'm going to ask you a procedural question. Is Attorney Madsen officially on the committee? Would she be voting?
I would say that town staff wouldn't vote.
All right, very fine.
I'm
We're
not on the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
very
just
fine.
here as a resource.
You're
Yeah,
just
right.
okay. Very fine. You're the lurkers.
Yeah, exactly.
The trollers.
Very fine. And as I said, I'm going to vote to opt out. Are there any concerns with this procedure? Does anyone have a concern that we have not addressed this in a fair and reasonable fashion?
I have a question about what's the difference between opt out and passively opt out.
Passively opt out, by that I'm meaning we just don't talk about it.
Okay.
We just say we're not going to make a decision now.
So I think that that's like the do nothing clause. It's like
That's the
status
do nothing
quo where
clause.
we don't weigh in and do it.
Yes.
But it sounds like this committee in the vote of 4 wants a formal ordinance indicating that Netherland is opting out.
Well, we would do a resolution. We wouldn't do an
Yes.
ordinance, but we would do a resolution.
Yes. So we would be one of the towns that has opted out of consume on premises marijuana.
And so that you all know, there really is, I mean, there may be a difference politically between opting out and passively opting out. But functionally, if you opt out by resolution, there would be no reason why at a following meeting you couldn't opt in.
No, that's true. That's true. I believe that what we're talking about here is, it sounds like there is a preponderance on the committee of individuals who believe this would not be a good idea, as opposed to individuals who think we may reconsider this more easily at a later time. I think, to your point, Jennifer, this is a political statement, and I think that is the result of this. I think the result of this discussion is we would like to make a political statement and issue a resolution stating that we are not opting in.
Okay.
Are there any other comments? Would anyone else like to discuss it? Because if there aren't, I believe this is our last meeting and we have a recommendation to make to the BOT. Please proceed.
Last meeting, I may suggest additional meetings if you've not made it. Have you made a decision? Have we come to some decision on delivery yet?
That is not part of the ambit of this committee.
Oh, no kidding.
The
Okay.
issue of delivery was not part of our charter.
Okay.
We may want to do, we may do this again for delivery. And Lord knows when we start delivering by drone, that may be a different set of meetings. So yeah.
Oh my.
And I think
right.
then to clarify, I know it was David from Agati who had brought up that we should consider delivery. To Trustee Taylor's point, it was not directed by the Board of Trustees for us to do so. It is something we could ask for direction from the Board of Trustees when we bring this resolution forward, if they feel this committee should reconvene to discuss delivery.
Yeah, thank you for jogging my memory. That's right. And I think there was some reason why he thought we ought to be considering. I wish I could remember.
Well, there
It
are lots of,
was like an
there are
opt-in,
lots,
opt-out situation.
yeah, there are lots of interesting issues around marijuana. There is no question of that.
Well, and I think the reason for that was there was confusion of whether or not that too was an opt-in or if it could just happen. We did confirm that effective January, a municipality still had to opt in order for delivery to occur within our jurisdiction.
It's not urgent. Got it.
Right. So it's kind of like hospitality. If you do nothing, it still can't happen. Yeah.
So before we adjourn, I want to make absolutely sure that everyone is comfortable with the process. Are there concerns about the process that we have followed here? Hearing no comments. I want to thank everyone for your time and for your input, for your suggestions and comments. I appreciate the fact that we've had several meetings here, and that takes up a lot of time for people. And I appreciate the input we've had from people in the industry, as well as the people on in other areas, including Ben and Allison, your work. Thank you very much, everyone. Miranda, do we have enough information? Well, Miranda and Jennifer, do we have enough information to propose a resolution?
Yes, I think we'll stay on. I'll stay on after this call with Jennifer, and potentially we can bring it forward to next week's board meeting. To which point I will send out the information to this committee in case you want to join, since that's kind of our final hoorah.
Absolutely, absolutely, and of course, anyone from the industry should be able to step forward and in that BOT discussion air their thoughts on this. But with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Miranda, is it all right if I stick around?
Yeah,
Thank you all.
of course.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Miranda, this is Karen. You know, I just got another text asking me to send you that document, but you got it already, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, cool.
Weird. Okay. Yeah, I have it. Okay. So I think Jennifer, I think we can get it on next week, but Jennifer, what's your thoughts?
No, we can definitely get it on next week. So I guess question would be whether we have it on as a discussion item first, and then bring it back for an action item at a later meeting.
My feeling is action because we were tasked to do this. I don't know.
That is a good point. That is a good point. However, bear in mind that it's not uncommon for us to take a discussion item and turn it into an action item.
That's what I was thinking.
If someone felt particularly if someone felt that we were done, we'd done our job fully and there were no additional questions, it would certainly be a common thing for one of the trustees to turn it into an action item.
And the other way that it could be done too is just have it as discussion on the meeting next week with a draft resolution, and then it could be on consent in March as well.
Yes, and if we were to provide the pros and cons that Karen took down, Karen, thank you so much for taking that on.
Sure.
I think that should be very helpful to the members of the BOT. Showing what we discussed and what our conclusions were based upon.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think so. Miranda, would you do the aim for it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And the idea would be it's the recommendation of the committee that the Board of Trustees opt out of these two licensing options for marijuana hospitality, and then that the Board of Trustees decides to opt out.
Okay.
who, I'm not aware of any municipality who has actually formally opted out.
So we've had a couple of presentations from both Marijuana Enforcement Division and Public Health that in their PowerPoints indicated who's opted out. There are a few who have formally opted
Okay.
out. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I know it's rare, but I think there's like one or two that made that
Well,
official statement.
And it is a political decision, you know, to formally adopt a resolution to opt out, but it also memorializes the Board of Trustees thinking on that particular date that this is what our position is on this issue.
And I think that from my standpoint, and I think there were a number of people who were thinking along these lines, Nederland is a pretty small town with good coverage for marijuana already, and there's a long, really twisty road. Well, they're all long, twisty roads leaving here. So if you're going to have to drive out, you're probably in more trouble here than anywhere else. So it just seems like we have a special case here where people have easy access to marijuana, no problem with that, but not where you can smoke and then get in your car and drive. So I think that is a fair thing to express as a statement.
Well, and so maybe that is another con, is that, and this is probably listed on there in some way, but the idea that the town doesn't want to be seen as a tourist destination for marijuana hospitality.
Well, we've discussed this kind of thing before in various other meetings where we want to make sure that this isn't a marijuana Disneyland. It's just not our goal. Our goal is to have a diverse collection of entertainment options for people. So yeah, I think that's probably true, although we wouldn't want to add that because it's outside, we've already adjourned. But
right.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's probably another fair con that we've discussed in other venues, yes.
Okay.
And so I looked at this PowerPoint, Jennifer, and it's actually, they added a slide about delivery, and Colorado Springs formally opted out of delivery. But they didn't have a slide in here about hospitality.
Okay.
And it's a case where, yeah, I think we can just, I think we have a good enough understanding of where Nederland is and our preferences. And yeah, I think if we're the first ones to do a resolution about this, I think that's probably okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, and I can craft the resolution. It's no big deal. So just wondering what other people have done.
Are you feeling comfortable with this, Miranda?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one who's come outside of the Kind Castle. There's no one who's ever really even come forward about this. I don't really have concerns. It's kind of, it's almost like cultivation too. It's just not a common conversation I'm having.
Yeah.
Was the Kind Castle a part of this committee?
He was. So they had originally, Mark was on it for like a day or two. Mark is no longer with Kind Castle, and I've invited John, who's the owner, and he just has not attended. He attended like one of the first ones.
I think this looked like something that might be interesting, but then thinking about the complications, I think it started to look less and less attractive. The issue of secondhand smoke and the employees, the issue of what if someone gets their 20 milligrams or whatever it is, and then drives off, and 30 minutes later it hits them. Who's responsible for that? I know I can tell. I'm going to tell a story about Jeanette, my wife. She, some 15 years ago, was in Boulder and visited a professor of agriculture at CU at his house. And it turns out he specialized in a particular type of agriculture and offered her a joint. In attempting to be polite, she went ahead and smoked a joint with him, got in her car and started driving home. And she said as she was driving home, all of a sudden, the road in front of her collapsed like this. And she was 500 feet above the ground. And she pulled over and was taken to the hospital.
Oh my God.
So, and it's because she didn't smoke marijuana much. And so my concern remains, what about the naive marijuana user who's the naive prospective marijuana user who goes to one of these places, smokes a joint, and 20 minutes later driving home, the road does this. Now what's she do? So I think that's a concern. We're all used to how alcohol affects people, and that's why we're not that worried about a new brew pub. Marijuana is way more diverse in its effects, and I think that's a concern. Certainly one of my concerns.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So Jennifer, I'm sure you saw I put in the code in the chat. So it looks like Silverthorne has what could also be a resolution, but an official ordinance language.
Okay. I wonder if did they put it in their code?
Yeah, they have it in there. That's the link I sent you. It takes you straight to their municipal code.
Yeah, I don't like that, but
I mean,
I feel like this language is the exact same for a resolution, though. Some of it.
So I think I feel perfectly okay making this a resolution. Changing municipal codes is always really complicated, and I think the resolution should be entirely sufficient.
Definitely. And if we did an ordinance, we'd probably have to do a public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and everybody's going to be attending the BOT who's going to care, and they'll be able to make their say. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be fun.
I mean, the thing about an ordinance and I've pulled this up, the thing about the benefit of an ordinance that's codified is that somebody could easily find, without calling Miranda or anybody else, they could find what the position is. But I think that's probably unlikely that people would go that route as opposed to making a phone call.
Agreed.
Correct.
Yeah, they're going to call her anyway.
Even when we made things really easy, they still like to call.
Yes. Well, it's nice talking to Miranda. So
I try to be helpful. No, I agree. Yeah, I think a resolution is perfectly. And then I think if we move to ordinance, it would make, the two marijuana establishments who are on the call who are not entirely comfortable with the full opt-out. I think it would kind of step against what they're looking for.
Exactly.
I was surprised there wasn't more pushback, but I'm also pleased that there wasn't more pushback. Nobody's really desperate to open a marijuana lounge here.
Well, and I think those two, Agati and Silverstone have other things going on. I mean, Silverstone's looking to expand, and so they have other ventures.
Right. But the other thing is COVID. The idea of gathering people, it's already tricky, but bars, as far as I understand, are still not allowed to operate. They're really supposed to be food first, because the idea is if you imbibe and you're impaired, you're going to make poor choices. And during a COVID, during a pandemic, why would, and I think they both know that.
Yeah.
And one of them even mentioned it, came out of the gate saying that. So.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like we're all good and everybody has what they need, and we can get this baby put to bed.
Absolutely. Miranda, I want to thank you so much for organizing all of these meetings. And Jennifer, thank you so much for attending this one. This was one where your ears were particularly helpful. And I think that's it.
Karen, thank you so much for covering the first part. I appreciate that.
Sure. No problem.
It was fun. The Excel chart was so beautiful, Karen.
Yes.
Actually, I can do a pretty nice one, but I was feeling a little nervous.
No, I know.
I do know all the things to do, Julie, and I just couldn't multitask. And then I couldn't find my mute, and then I was like, I'm just gonna leave my mic on.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you very much.
Hey, Miranda, can you stay on for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I need to keep my video off though, because I tried to turn it on earlier and then I had to leave the meeting altogether.
Yeah, mine's wonky too.
I don't know what's happening at town hall, but it seems like this is the time you dropped too yesterday.
It's so weird.
Like, why? Yeah.
I don't know if everybody gets on after school to watch Netflix.
Must be it. Yeah. It's like, what?
So the main thing I wanted to ask is if you had seen my email, I forwarded Aaron's voicemail message
Yeah.
that he has been trying to send us. And the thing is I don't think he's getting my emails because he hasn't been replying to any of my emails. So I thought it just makes sense for you to talk to him
Yep.
and work it out. And maybe we just need to, and we can set it up and we can invite him through maybe a personal email address. I really don't know, but we're having there's some sort of reason why we're not getting his emails. And
Well, I'm thinking though, if he can get ours, we might as well just set it up and I'll call him. But we might as well just set it up and say here.
Yeah, I don't think he's gotten mine though. See, I've emailed him several times saying, "Hey, I never got the link. I never got the link." He never got my email. And then he's saying he's trying to send to us. So I think something's screwy that way, you know.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to, and I just think it makes sense if you just talk to him.
Yeah.
We'll get it all figured out. The other thing has to do with the mold. I think this is getting a little complicated because we've got the doctor from Workman's Comp saying get the mold tested, and then we've got Boulder County Public Health saying, well, no, why would you do that? And we don't recommend it. And I haven't heard Amanda weigh in. Has she weighed in?
No, but when I talked to Amanda yesterday, she just indicated that it's just such a complicated case that she's never dealt with, that she was going to consult some of her supervisors. So that's probably why we're not hearing from Amanda, is because she doesn't even know how to guide us really in moving forward. Cynthia's new thing is not wanting Nikki to treat the mold, but the mold inspector said it was perfectly fine for her to do it. And so I kind of called Amanda and I'm like, at what point in time do we tell Cynthia, like, we understand how you personally feel, but this is what all the professionals are saying. So this is what we do.
Right. So here's the thing with Amanda, because the same thing happened with Flip. It was way over her. So I contacted our lawyer through Employers Council, and I think I forwarded you her back when this first started and we were trying to figure things out because Christy wasn't here. I sent you the Employers Council lawyer. So I talked to her and she really gave me great advice. And then I talked back with Amanda and I said, here's what our lawyer from from Employers Council is saying. And then we worked on it together. Now, if she's going above her head and there's some great people at CIRSA, you know, who might be able to help her, but that is an option we have. You know, we pay the $3,800 a year or whatever, and for that we get like 100 and some hours of legal advice anytime we want from Employers Council. So that might be our next step if we can't get any satisfaction.
I might even call Amanda too tomorrow, because if we feel like Boulder County is the way we want to go, then I want to call off Eric and not have him come up here on a Saturday. Now, if we don't test, that's going to rile up Cynthia. For sure.
Well, and the other reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because I love the idea of going to more people at town hall, opening up for more hours. I love the idea of bringing Emily on. So I'm totally so supportive of it. The issue will be, of course, Cynthia is not going to want to be over at the annex, and that's fine. Even if we do get it clean, she may still balk, you know. And then what are we going to do about space over in town hall? So that's just a thought I've been having. Like,
I don't even think that's Cynthia wants to be in the annex, because Cynthia wanted, and she asked me if she could, and I told her no. I told her until we can sort it out, I don't want her in there, because I don't want the drama of, and town hall made me go back in there or whatever. So I just said no. You know, she really does want to be back in her own space. So I don't have too much concern about that. It's a matter of, you know, she wanted to go in there the other day to like look at the mold, and I told her no. I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that drama. And Nikki brought up a great point that the picture we have is dirt. It's not actually mold. And so there may be an overreaction too, and that the mold is actually only on the corner of the vanity door and not on the entire bottom surface. That's dirt.
And is it the black mold?
It's black mold, but it's only a tiny bit on the corner of the door.
Well, then couldn't we just say it's that black mold that was called out in the one email? Or Or do we know if it's not that black mold?
Well, I think we just have to decide what battle are we ready to have with it.
Yeah,
Because if
exactly.
we don't test, it's going to be a battle. And I mean, I guess it's really kind of maybe your call. Like, do you want to just spend the 300 just so we don't have to have that battle?
Well, I've always been fine with that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
That doesn't bother me. I think $300, if it gives Cynthia a peace of mind, and if we take that next step, I mean, I don't see a downside to it. Is there a
Okay.
downside to it? Do you think?
No, I mean, no, I don't. I mean, I think
Other than the 300.
it's just more of a matter of like, I don't want Cynthia to also go down the rabbit hole. So it's like, I feel fine paying the 300, but that's where it ends. Nikki
Yes.
will clean this
Yes.
on her own. We're not going to get the professional. She's also talking about pulling permits, and I'm like, she's not doing any major work.
No.
And so I feel
No.
like after I do the test, I'm going to cut Cynthia off and just be like,
Yes.
this is it. Like,
Yes.
for all the other advice we've gotten,
Yes.
this is all we're doing.
And I think also let her know, we're working with the professionals. We're working with Boulder County Public Health. We're working with CIRSA. She has to trust us, she's just got to trust us. And I did want to ask you about the water and the moisture. So have we taken care of that as well? Or is that still an issue as far as moisture getting into that area?
It's still an issue. So Nikki needs to order a new hot water heater. They're tiny. It's like a baby one over there. So I told her Cynthia has money in her budget. We had put money aside for maintenance, so just to buy it. So she's going to do that. And that's going to finish addressing the moisture issue. She says it's just dripping. So we really need to pull that hot water heater.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then I did talk to Rita last week, and we both agreed that we could find money in the budget if we did need to do some sort of mold mitigation or whatever. If it's not included in, let's say, I'm just saying worst case scenario, because you and I had talked about the potential to spend like 2,000 or whatever. But anyways, I talked to Rita about it. We definitely are confident we can find the money. So, if we do need to throw a little money at it to make it all safe and sound, unless it were to go pretty high, I think we're going to be fine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they determine the mold is like where it needs seed, but hasn't moved. So really it's just dealing with the bathroom. Although Cynthia brings up good points that potentially even pulling a hot water heater, because we're a commercial building, may require building permits.
Yeah, but we would just get the building permit for ourselves. We're waived of the fee through Safe Built. I think we still have to pay them, I think, the 20% of whatever it would be.
30, I think, yeah. So, and that's fine. Chris and I already talked that if we had to pull permits, we would pull permits through me and not through her. Just, we're trying to minimize kind of her ammunition a little bit.
I think, and her emotional,
Yes.
We want to try to keep her balanced and
and
know that we're all doing everything we can, and we take it seriously, and we take the situation seriously, and all that.
Well, and I actually ended up, I snapped at her a little bit. I was also grouchy, but I snapped at her a little bit yesterday because she was just going round and round and round, acting like we didn't care. And I pretty much lost it. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, our team is going above and beyond for you. We took this seriously from day one. And so I don't want to hear it anymore. That you don't feel like you're being taken care of.
How does she react when you talk to her that way?
She thanked me for calling her out, which I was like very surprised by.
Yeah.
And she said she understood that she was being a little annoying. She then cycled back and said the same things over and over again. I said, before we get off the call, I'm just going to reiterate that I will keep you updated, but you have to, because she was like, oh, maybe I should reach out to Dan Wester. And I said, you are not to reach out to anyone. You need to let me work this. And so I was surprised that she took, I had to stop her. I was like, I can't.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, Miranda, because even just in the couple meetings I've been with her this week, she just goes on, and she doesn't stay on point. And it can take like 20 minutes to accomplish nothing.
Yeah.
Listen to her. And I just think to myself, I don't know how you do it, because, I can handle a few of those a week, for 20 minutes or whatever, but you do it for hours. I don't know how you do it. I don't know.
It's definitely a lot of patience. And a lot of it was and I told her that. I said, I'm not feeling totally myself today. And so, you have to excuse me, but what I'm saying, I mean. Like, you got to chill out.
Yeah.
It's not working. And so, yeah. I don't know.
For some reason, I could not sleep last night. I had a really hard time getting to sleep. So I'm just letting you know because I'm sort of winding down and feeling really tired. I am still, of course, going to be on the DDA, but I'm not going to be as sharp as I normally am with them because I do try to like pay attention in case they're doing something that's like against the statute or something.
Totally. Like, could you not do something illegal today? That'd be great.
Yeah, can we just stick to the bylaws or whatever? But
yeah, I'm interested more so than anything to listen to that final conversation. So it's too
I
bad it's at the end. I'm like, could you do that?
I am planning on just being quiet. And I really loved the way the meeting went last night and how they were self-regulating. They were monitoring. Because the reason why I texted you was really the concern that the other 2 or 3 people said, which is this is not a platform for us to give our opinions. And, you know, there was a few of them who were sort of on their soapboxes and sort of lecturing everybody about their opinion. But it was kind of cool to have it happen and then have those people call out and say, no, that's not really why we're here. You know, we're here to represent the entire community. And how do we get that voice? Which I thought that was amazing because there's a lot of really smart people. Who is that woman? She's got the accent.
Clara. So Clara is the wife of Brian. Oh, what is Brian's last name? Brian something, who is on ProStab. They're new to the community.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think she's amazing. I love how she's so calm and she just says what she says. See, like I thought Karen Blakemore did an amazing job. Because
that's why I wanted to start with her.
That was brilliant because she really focused on what the task at hand was, and she didn't give her own opinions. Not that you can't give it, you know, some here and there, but I do, you know, someone like Atashna, I really do appreciate her. I really truly do, but sometimes I just wonder if she's really kind of all there and understanding what this process is, but it was great that we didn't have to say anything. People on the committee said, and they were very kind. It was all very kind and professional. Even people who disagreed, I just thought it was great.
Actually, so Kayla stopped by earlier and she started talking about people's personal interests. And I said, I think when we start to head into the committee, it'll be good to remind them that, like, we all know you all have your own bias. There's no question about that. So now that you're going to housing, like Atashna almost refused to pick any other category. Of course. So she's on housing, you need to check your bias at the door and having those conversations with really Atashna ahead of time. I think, and Amanda. It's like Amanda's going to be on arts and culture and education. You need to look at all 3 components, not just how this benefits frozen Dega days.
And maybe that's, you know, a good role for you and I as facilitators, just to remind people that, you know, your opinions are as important as anyone else in this room. That being said, we're really trying to gauge the full community. What does the full community, you know, how can we represent the entire community, which is a task. I mean, that is like really a tricky task. I loved what Jill said about, you know, 62 may not seem like so much, but kudos to the staff because that's not easy.
Yeah.
No, it was great. It was great. So
it'll be interesting. I don't have all the response yet. It'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is that if it works out, I'm really hoping we don't have too many of the committees that want to meet on the weekends. But if they do, if there's some way you could have me be the host, or I could just set up my own, although I don't think I really can do that.
In the worst case scenario is I can always like start it on my phone and then I don't. This is what I do for Claudia all the time. It's like I start it on my phone and then I don't listen and I don't participate. So,
okay.
And I wanted to give them the weekend because I didn't want to give that feel that this is about town. It's not about us. And just because we work Monday through Friday doesn't mean. I'll tell you though, most people are not picking the weekend.
Yeah. I thought that was brilliant. You know, you took every day. You didn't treat any day differently. You're very inclusive with the days. So, and I think that makes sense, you know, you know, and no matter how this shakes out, I do still think there's people who think this is all government as opposed to the bigger community. But I do love that May kind of did not, you know, belabor the whole you know, people complaining about the mayor and complaining about the government and not trusting the government. She could have gotten on her soapbox and gone on, and she really didn't. You know, I was really pleased that she did. You know. Okay. I think we covered everything. You're going to get a hold of Erin. We're moving along on the mold. I like our approach. I'm okay with the 300. You're gonna, yeah, do you want to wait until we have the meeting with the town hall staff before you post the job?
So I talked to Rita, because I have to talk to her about like, what on earth is gonna happen with Kirsty when she comes back? Because I don't want her to get wrapped around the axle when she realizes like 2 workers' comp claims happened when she was gone, and there are all these, like, I need her to chill out. And so I told Rita this is my interest and I was gonna talk to you. So she knows that I would ask that Christy really does post on Indeed. Let's just be fair, and we'll just do it on Tuesday after we talk to the town hall team. And then I'd like her to prioritize that, because Christy does not prioritize putting things on Indeed. It's just, she doesn't prioritize recruitment, really.
Well, and we don't need to put it on Indeed.
Okay.
So the only thing you have to do is, you know, and not have to, but the minimum that we do is the newspaper, our website, and Facebook. Indeed, the CML listserv, all the other ones that we do, that's just for certain jobs. It's not required. You know, at a certain level, we're going to do it. If people want to do it, of course they can, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
I don't even think we should for this one, to be honest. Indeed is a lot of people who aren't even paying attention. They're just replying because Indeed says, you know, easy apply. So a lot of people do it, but it comes with no cover letter. They live in Ohio. You know, it's like,
yeah,
I'm fine if we don't, to be honest with you. Is there a way we can just handle all of this with minimal interaction with Christy?
I mean, yeah, I feel like, to me, it's like if she's too overwhelmed, like I know last time she helped me interview, but I would be fine to team up with you. I mean, I don't really care. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't need.
I'm happy to, I actually love to do the interviews and stuff. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I'm happy to help you with that. And really, when Christy comes back, everything that happened while she was gone, we handled, and the payroll's done, and she was ahead on her accounts payable. So I'm not really sure. I mean, just like all of us, she'll have a lot of emails. I get that, and that can feel overwhelming. But even Rita tried to help that by having the accounts payable going to her. So any of those kinds of emails, she's looking at first. Rita says she's going to meet with her, and is she coming back tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
She kind of said, she's basically going to send her an email, but that she didn't have time for Christy all day, which I understand and I agree. My only concern is like, this is also Christy we're talking about. And so if nobody meets with her, like it could cause a lot, like I'd rather get ahead of it and be like, hi, Christy, all these things happen, but here's who's handling X, Y, and Z. You don't need to worry about it today. Versus her getting a bunch of emails.
Right. Well, and I don't mind doing that. I could email her first thing in the morning because she doesn't start till, 9:30 or whatever, but I could send it earlier than that. Now I am coming to Public Works. We have to be there at noon, correct? I mean, not nine, sorry.
Yeah.
At Town Shop, right?
Yeah.
But I could contact her. I could even text her and just let her know, hey, we had some workman's comp claim. We also had a facility claim that ended up not going anywhere, but I can let you know about all that, when I have some time. Don't even worry about it. We got it covered. I could do that.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I want to talk to Rita because Rita wanted me to email her everything that I've been kind of dealing with that maybe falls into Christy's world, but I didn't know where she was going to go from there with it.
Rita wanted you to send that to Rita?
To Rita, correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm fine with that because she's her supervisor. If that's the way she'd rather do it, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I just know she said, and I don't know, again, I don't know what format that's all going to come out in, if it's going to be just a quick touch base or if it's just an email.
Yeah.
But, I'm happy to talk to Christy. I just don't want Christy to, my fear is I don't want to start over with Christy. It's like, you were gone. Do you just have to pick up where we all left, where we are now, and not take us all the way back to the beginning?
Right.
Because I don't have time for that.
Because she does like to do that and
I know.
analyze and look at if we missed a step or we didn't cross that I or, T or whatever. Yeah, and I don't want her to waste that time either.
Yeah, so.
Well, I don't know. You're gonna go ahead and email Rita. Would you mind just copying me into?
Sure.
And then, because that way I'll know what Rita knows. And I know Rita knows a lot of this stuff because Rita and I have been talking a lot this week about other things, but I always mention to her what's going on so she knows.
Yeah.
And you probably did as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But Christy's working from home tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, I don't know anything otherwise, but yeah.
I mean, she's not generating checks. The payroll's done. There's no
Right.
reason for her to come in. She's all fully set up at home.
Yeah.
So why would she come in?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. But I guess I was going to a place where well, it won't go there. Where I was going to say, if something happens and Cynthia can't work in the annex and we do get another person, I would be happy to share my office space with you where on the days I come in, I'm in it. And on the days you come in, you're there. So that, because it is a big space and we could set it up so you kind of have your own little workstation. Anyways, it was just a thought I had.
That's a good, yeah. I mean, she really, I don't, I thought about it like having her here, but it's like, even if we had more than one person, she's distracting. And so she really does belong in her own space.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So making that work, but within reason, I do think I'm going to have that kind of reality talk with her.
Yeah.
What you want, but this is how it's going to be.
Yeah. Okay, well,
We'll
cool.
see how that goes.
All right, so
Thanks.
I will for sure see you tomorrow morning at 9. I'll also see you on the virtual meeting tonight.
Talk to you shortly.
All right, bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.